Imagine being asked to write a sitcom episode with the following premise. During a live radio theater broadcast, everything that can go wrong does go wrong. How would you write this episode? Comedy follows the basic structure of setup and punchline. A new situation is introduced.
Guys, what does a pregnancy test look like?
Followed by a pattern of logic.
No, it's like a thin piece of plastic with a thing on the end of it.
And ends with an unexpected deviation from the pattern.
Okay, so this is definitely a gun.
Whoa!
We can see how this works for a 10-second joke, but how do you extend this structure across the length of a 20-minute sitcom? More importantly, how do you make it funny and engaging the whole time? Frasier's Season 4, Episode 18, Ham Radio, is widely considered the best entry of the entire series and frequently appears on lists of the funniest sitcom episodes of all time. But why? How does an episode about an ill-fated radio drama elicit so many laughs? In this video, we'll break down the structure of Ham Radio to discover why it stands out as one of the greatest episodes in sitcom history.
Sit down, Inspector. You're about to hear a fascinating tale.
Much of the comedy in Frasier works in a three-part structure. Think of this structure like the firing of a gun. In part 1, we're introduced to the gun, in part 2, we see the gun loaded, and in part 3, the gun is fired. Consider this example from Season 4, Episode 8, Our Father Whose Art Ain't Heaven. In this scene, Frasier's father, Martin, has gifted Frasier with a painting Frasier secretly hates. Martin excitedly speculates where they should hang it, leading to this exchange.
I was thinking maybe we could put it over the fireplace.
Yes, the fireplace. That's the first place I thought of too.
Notice the three-part structure, the presenting, loading, and firing of the gun. We're presented with the gun, the ugly painting. We see the gun loaded. Martin suggested they hang it above the fireplace. And finally, we see the gun fired, the double-meaning remark about the fireplace. Here's a question you might be asking. Comedy is about the unexpected, so how does this fit within the three-part structure? How can it be a surprise when the gun goes off if we saw it being loaded? The answer is simple. Don't let your audience know you've loaded the gun until after it's fired. Take another look at our fireplace example. What ultimately set up the punchline? What loaded the gun? It's Martin's suggestion that they hang the painting above the fireplace. But within the context of the scene, this is a perfectly logical thing for him to say. It's not a comment that immediately strikes us as the setup of a punchline. It's only after we're hit with the punchline,
Yes, the fireplace. That's the first place I thought of too.
that we realize we were being set up at all. This is one of the best ways to elicit laughter, the delight of realization. It's a sensation similar to watching a magic trick. The delight lies in being fooled, realizing only after the fact that we were being set up or misdirected. Alright, so now we know about loading and firing the gun. What does this have to do with a radio drama where everything goes wrong? Well, in our fireplace joke, everything happened rather quickly. We're presented with the gun, watch it get loaded, and see it fired all in a matter of a few seconds. But what if this was stretched out longer? What if the introduction, loading, and firing of the gun took place not seconds apart, but whole scenes apart? That would be pretty interesting. But let's take it a step further. What if there was more than one gun? What if there was an entire onslaught of jokes being set up, an entire arsenal of guns being loaded beneath our very noses? Jokes we never knew were being set up until the final act of the show. All the punchlines rolling out one right after the other. All the guns going off at once. Let's set the stage. The episode begins with Frasier at the radio station, informing his listeners that he'll be hosting a live radio theater production called Nightmare Inn.
You'll never know what's lurking in the shadows.
Well, that should certainly comfort the woman who called in about her paranoia.
Frasier, perhaps more than any other sitcom, is intentionally structured like a play, with tight plots, clever, elevated dialogue, and minimal sets. For this reason, as soon as we're told about the radio drama, we know the story will center almost exclusively around this plot element. It's what makes episodes of Frasier the type you can describe as the one where... This could be anything, from the one where they buy a restaurant, to the one where they drive cross-country in a Winnebago, or, in this case, the one where everything goes wrong during a radio drama. So now that we have our central plot element, the radio production, we need our primary source of conflict. Being a brilliantly written show, Frasier always contains a strong dose of irony. In fact, the entire premise of the show is ironic. Frasier Crane is a radio psychiatrist who counsels strangers about their relationships while continually bungling his own relationships through a complete inability to follow his own advice. As the episode progresses, the central source of conflict becomes immediately obvious. Frasier, ever the control freak, is obsessed with perfecting the production, causing him to frustrate and alienate the rest of the cast. Even before we've reached the chaotic final act, we can see how this ironic situation will play out. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. Earlier, we alluded to numerous guns being loaded and fired. How does that work and what does it look like? In the show's second act, we're given a critical scene where the cast comes to Frasier's apartment to rehearse the production. During this witty and comical scene, we're given several important pieces of information, including Roz is responsible for delivering numerous crucial, plot-specific lines in the play.
I can't believe any of my guests could be a multiple murderer.
It's easy for you to say.
Loose Cannon Bulldog is given a problematic speaking role and also wants a part for his girlfriend. Gil is jealously protective of his character's dying monologue. Frasier's obsessive direction causes their professional voice actor to quit, forcing Frasier to turn to his brother Niles at the last minute. And Frasier fails to tell Niles he'll be playing 6 different characters. This entire scene is funny and entertaining in its own right, but more importantly, it's loading all the guns. Better yet, it's loading them in ways we don't yet fully understand. We know all these details we're being given are important, but why? Why is it important that we know Gil is obsessing over his monologue? Why do we need to know Bulldog's girlfriend is being given a bit part? What will be the fallout of Niles playing 6 unrehearsed roles? In the final act, we see the culmination of all this setup. The radio broadcast begins, and as our premise dictates, everything that can go wrong does go wrong. One by one, the loaded guns begin to go off. Roz arrives fresh off an emergency dental procedure, leaving her barely able to say her lines.
I can't believe any of my guests could be a multiple murderer.
Bulldog comes down with crippling stage fright, forcing Frasier to improvise. And Bulldog's girlfriend, a profound dyslexic, struggles with her single line.
Look out! He's got a nug!
The combination of character and circumstance is what generates the high level of comedy throughout this scene. Imagine if this was an offline production, allowing for cuts and retakes, and that Frasier was an easygoing, flexible director. The comedy would be virtually non-existent. It's the fact that this is live and Frasier is an unyielding control freak that skyrockets the hilarity. Watching Frasier grow from annoyed to livid, left with no choice but to continue because he's live on air. It's a perfectionist nightmare, forced to contend with sudden script changes, increasingly belligerent actors, and an inept sound effects technician. Earlier, we discussed the irony of Frasier. As the ill-fated Nightmare Inn approaches its climax, we get to see this play out in all its comedic glory. The focus of Frasier's obsession has been that everything go perfectly. What could it be then but this very obsession that finally drives the show completely off the rails? The derailment begins as Frasier informs Gil that his beloved monologue has been cut for time. Gil tries to protest, but Frasier is unyielding. What ensues is a hilarious power struggle as Gil rewrites the story on the fly in order to jam his monologue back in. Frasier, in a tyrannical rage, thwarts Gil at every turn, devolving the radio production into a hilarious parody of nonsensical carnage. The irony is what makes the exchange endlessly hilarious. Rather than show some flexibility and allow Gil to perform his monologue, Frasier upends his own production in a furious and futile attempt to keep control. Finally, the production reaches its climax. Niles, still fuming at being given 6 roles and resenting his older brother's tyrannical directing, begins the wrap-up, in which the killer confesses and reveals the secrets of Nightmare Inn. At this point, there's a sense that even for all the hilarious mishaps that have preceded, the production can still be left on a good note with a well-executed conclusion. But in a final twist of irony, Frasier, completely failing to learn his lesson, can't resist micromanaging his brother. Niles hits his breaking point and hijacks the show.
Okay, that's it.
Using some well-placed balloons, he hilariously kills off all the characters except Frasier's inspector, leaving Frasier all alone to fill 9 minutes of empty airtime. The hilarity of ham radio comes from a brilliant understanding and execution of structure, character, and irony. Frasier's obsession that everything go right is exactly what makes everything go wrong. This is what excellent character-driven story looks like. Would this episode be funny if Frasier was a flexible, easygoing guy that suffered some unfortunate inconveniences? Sure. But we would miss that sense of hilarious comeuppance, that logical progression of cause and effect so necessary for a comedy like this. Once we see Frasier bulldozing everyone in an obsession to make things go right, we know the only outcome can be disaster. There's a certain element of comedic justice, or, as we've stated already, irony. Comedy, in many ways, is the most difficult form of writing. It requires a massive amount of effort, yet must appear effortless. Jokes must be set up, yet the setup itself must be both concealed and entertaining. Comedy must do all the work of drama, telling an engaging story with engaging characters, yet also make you laugh every step of the way. It's no easy feat, which is why an episode like Ham Radio serves as such a masterclass of not just comedy writing, but writing itself. So I hope this helps. Comment below with what you believe is the funniest sitcom episode of all time, and subscribe for more writing tips.